Jeb Sturmer. Wet, wild, and what? Wet, wild, and what? Jeb Sturmer.
If a house is called a handyman special, we know that place is a dump, right? And so often, if a woman is called bubbly, it just means she's annoying. And if you're ever thinking of taking a trip that's called exhilarating, that means before you even leave town, you ought to buy yourself either a casket or an urn, because there's a good chance you're not coming back. Madam Contest Master, ladies and gentlemen, started like this. One evening I was at home just surfing on the internet. Or as my girlfriend calls it, ignoring me. Came across this great ad. It said, wet, wild, and wonderful, exhilarating rafting trip in rugged West Virginia. The pictures were fantastic. They looked exhilarating. Exhilaration is like eating an Altoid or like getting wasabi in your nose. And I thought my life could really use some exhilaration. So I clicked the Buy It Now button and I secured myself a spot on a raft that was going to be cruising some Class 5 whitewater. I figured, okay, 5 out of 10. How hard can it be? As it turns out, the ratings only go up to 5. So that was as hard as it could be. According to Wikipedia, in Class 5 whitewater, you can expect to encounter huge waves, huge rocks and obstacles, as well as almost inescapable hydraulic holes. It says, these rapids are only to be attempted by expert paddlers using state-of-the-art equipment. But in spite of that, they still come with a warning. Danger to life and limb. Wow. I guess it was an understatement when I compared it to an Altoid. But I decided to go anyway. On the day of my trip, I left home at 5 a.m. and drove to the river outpost. When I got there, I was really impressed by how young and muscular everyone looked compared to me. There was also a lot of body art. I think everyone had at least 3 tattoos, and there were a ton of piercings. I mean, rings, posts, plugs, gauges. I felt like I was at an employee meeting at Whole Foods. There was this one scrawny guy, and he looked for the life of me like Edward Scissorhands. Remember that guy? He had that black Medusa hair and the really pale goth skin and just an unbelievably vacant look in his eyes. So I went up to him. I said, "Excuse me, are you a raft guy?" He said, "Oh, no, I'm the bus driver." "But they said they're going to have to make me a guide if I get another DUI. Great. A few minutes later, the guide did come out. This is the man who was going to give us the do's and the don'ts of rafting. It was his advice that was going to keep us safe. And the first thing he said was, "I'd like to get a line over here, okay, with all of my organ donors." Okay. So I got out some cash because I thought they were like taking up a donation by the bus driver to deliver. And then I noticed that every one of their coolers was marked with a red cross. Those were for our organs. I said, wait a minute. This isn't what I signed up for at all, okay? I mean, I had the brochure. It said Wet, Wild, and Wonderful, okay? I thought it was going to be like a Carowinds log ride. When I left home that morning, my biggest concern was, how am I going to keep this camera dry? Not, when are they going to harvest my kidneys? Next, he said that he wanted us to pair up with our buddies. See, our buddy was going to be our lifeline. If we got thrown out of the raft, our buddy would be the one to haul us back in. We got smashed up against a rock, our buddy would help stanch the bleeding. He said our buddy was our ticket to survival, and he wanted to know if anyone had come without a buddy. Well, that would just be me. And he says, oh, that's okay. You can buddy up with Worm. Worm? His mama named him Worm. I didn't know who this was, so I scanned the crowd, and then I saw a guy looking back in my direction, and when we made eye contact, he gave me one of those little head tilts of acknowledgement. And then when I returned the tilt, he started laughing at me. But what really worried me was it turns out that Worm was the bus driver. I decided right then I had to get out of this mess. So I just sort of eased my way to the back of the room up against the wall. And then when everyone else began comparing scars, I slipped out the door. Now, fortunately, the parking lot was an ocean of oversized, knobby-tired, four-wheel drive vehicles. So I had no trouble finding my Honda Civic. I jumped in and locked the door. And as soon as I turned that key, it was like I magically got my life back. Radio was already set to NPR. I drove home at 55 miles an hour. And when I got there, I hugged my fiancée. We walked around the yard together and watered the plants. And for me, that was exhilarating enough.